You know, every day is a little surprise, Paul. I see that you changed the title to We Fail Wednesday. I
I was
appreciate
just
that.
curious if you'd noticed. I see that you
Um,
have.
it burns a little bit, and I don't know why. Welcome back, everybody. As you can see, if you're watching the video, I'm not at the usual desk. The microphone just isn't working, and I don't know why. I have done nothing. I've changed nothing. All I did was shut down my computer last night, turned it on this morning, and now that microphone is not working. And I forgot to comb my hair, but who gives a rat's whatever? You know what? Today is just going so very well in my life. But anyways,
Technology is the gift that keeps on giving, Brad.
it
And
is
now you're receiving.
receiving something. But today's show is brought to you by Cloudberry. Check them out, cloudberrylab.com/FRD, and learn how to back up to basically any public cloud, or there's even private cloud options, and protect yourself from ransomware with encryption, all that good stuff. Check them out, cloudberrylab.com/FRD. And don't check out Paul because he's on my naughty list today, I guess.
I have been looking at Cloudberry Labs, and I
You
like
would.
it. I think I'm going to use it.
It is interesting.
But we'll get to that. Yeah, no, it's really good stuff.
Yeah. Speaking of really good stuff, I had this great picture for the background for the computer back there.
Saw that.
And it was going to be a player like leaning back because there was an inside pitch because I got some email sent to me yesterday internally from Microsoft. It's about the most inside baseball thing I've probably ever written.
Okay.
And it involves a reorg. And so what I believe is in the Windows Next, this was actually Mary Jo helped me out a little bit on this because apparently there's two Next organizations inside of Microsoft. Who knew? There's one in the AI under Harry Shrum, and then there's also one on the Windows side. But I believe it was the Windows side was reorged. And basically, they combined a couple different studios. One was called EDM, which I had no idea what that stood for, nor did Mary Jo or did anybody else. Fortunately, some tipsters at Microsoft told me that it stands for Everyday Magic. Because,
by the way, that's amazing. That is amazing.
Yep. And this
Brad,
included,
what products fall under the EDM umbrella, would you say?
Well, there's a lot of bass, a little bass on, well, if you're familiar with EDM music, but I'm guessing maybe some of our listeners don't. But anyways, Everyday Magic includes Paint 3D, Remix 3D, Mixed Reality Viewer, MR, VR, AR viewing apps, and similar experiences.
So, all the superfluous stuff.
All the mixed reality stuff that was kind of rocking and rolling. And then also there was another org or whatever studio called Evoke. And that involved the photos and video app. And so what they're basically doing is smashing those two together. And part of the layoffs were actually some of the, I'm guessing, the higher end management in some of those studios were let go as part of the layoffs that I wrote about on Monday or Tuesday or whatever day that was. And
That's
so, so basically what it sounds like they're doing is they're kind of shuffling up the deck when it comes to their AR, VR, MR solutions and making things a little more streamlined. They also internally are saying that, hey, this doesn't have any impact on RS4, but hopefully it will have an impact on RS5, which means don't expect, well, we already know what's in the AR, VR, MR world. I hate that I have to say all three of those because Microsoft, we already know what's in Redstone 4, and so hopefully we'll see some stuff in Redstone 5. There were also some just larger reorgs, just what is referred to, and I could not figure out what this was. If anybody knows, they refer to it internally as the Pentad, which obviously is a
man, that's awesome.
Yeah, I have no
Star Chamber.
Yeah. There were some org changes to the Pentad, which I was able to outline, and you can go read those over on Petri if that kind of thing suits your noggin. I know for some people that follow the org charts, it is. And there's some new teams. There's a new team in India now, and there's just a bunch of other stuff going on. But it's just kind of a little bit of inside information about what is happening inside the org charts in the world of Next and AR, VR, MR stuff.
I remember when you first found out about this, about layoffs, that they seemed kind of minor, but you had already been told, I guess, at the time that it came largely from the Windows group. And so this kind of bears out that information.
Yep.
I mean, two things of note that just spring to mind when you talk about those products. One is that when Microsoft first announced its what was it called, Story Remix or whatever. It was described as a new app at Build last year, and that never materialized. But they added that functionality to the existing Photos app. Which is fine. I mean, it doesn't really matter how they deliver it, but it's interesting to me that those groups were previously separate,
Right.
and I wonder what kind of machinations had to occur to get them together. I know because he told me that Chris Pratley was the person behind the Story Remix stuff, which makes sense because Story Remix works a lot like Sway, which Chris Pratley also did. And did he come up at all in your?
Yeah. So to be completely and 100% transparent, the email just references a Chris. It doesn't say.
That's got to be him. It's got to be
right,
him.
But
does he lead this new group?
He does, and that was my understanding as well. Is that Chris Pratley is now, as for the time being, he is leading this group. Although that very much likely will change, according to the email that they're just trying to figure out. They're figuring out what's going on. Other insider news, Paul, you may know this person. She's been on stage, I believe, a few times. Megan Saunders, does that name ring a bell? But she was responsible
I'm terrible
for
with names.
Yeah, same with you. You would probably recognize her. She was leading. She did Skype for HoloLens. She did a lot of these AR, VR, MR demos. It is noted that she's not leaving the company, but she is changing roles, and they haven't announced what it is yet. So.
Well, that's interesting. So I wonder if she was previously in charge of that stuff or something.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what she was. She was in charge of those. So she's a general manager, I believe.
Chris Pratley, by the way, is the guy behind OneNote as well. I mean, he's got kind of a neat history of thinking outside the box, I guess.
Yeah. So,
okay.
There we go. And if any of those people know how to fix my microphone and why that's not working, I would also be very interested in that and knowing what Pentad.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. Technology is black magic, not science.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Speaking of, because my Echo wasn't working so well right before this, because why? I have nice things. Apple, was it Apple that came out with this? But Siri now has over 500 million active users. That sounds actually pretty decent.
It sounds crazy, actually. In researching this, just to answer your question, yes, they mentioned it very in passing in a HomePod announcement. It was just kind of 2/3 of the way down. It was like, hey, by the way, there's 500 million active users. I actually forgot to put this in my article, but the number that they quoted last June, I guess it was at WWDC, was 375 million active users. I was talking to you guys, you and Mehdi, about this. We discovered the latest number from Microsoft was 148 million on Cortana. That was only up 3 million, by the way, over 7 months. And so it looks like Cortana usage has plateaued. But I also find these numbers to be suspect, because if you look at Google Assistant and at Amazon's Assistant, you find that hard numbers are kind of hard to come by. Alexa has, I'm sorry, guys. The Amazon one has been around for a long time, but Amazon is very tight-lipped about stuff, right? So you'll never really see any data there. We know that there are several million, and by several million, actually, it's probably north of 10 million now, but some low double-digit million number of Echo devices out in the world. It's not very big, honestly. Google announced their Assistant, which frankly is just an update to the Google Now stuff that's been in Android for a little while, but they announced it at I/O in 2016. By I/O at 2017, the way that they said it was that we now have 100 million devices running the Assistant. Those devices at that time were almost exclusively Android phones, meaning new Android phones. I don't remember the exact number, but I want to say Google's partners sell, I don't know if it's 1 billion or 1.5 billion Android devices a year. So that number actually seems kind of low when you think about it. But I guess a lot of Android guys, use an older version of the software or whatever. This year, I expect those numbers to be quite different. But it's interesting that when you compare 500 million to 148 to 100 to tens of millions, the world is reversed, right, from our expectation of who the market leader is. And I can't quite make that math make any sense. other than the fact that I will say that I think the active user number is suspect. Some market researchers will use something called a monthly average user. I didn't quote too heavily from that stuff, but when you look at that, and it's US only data, et cetera,
Mhm.
the numbers are very small. It's like single digit millions on most of the assistants. And this is from mid 2017. So I don't know if they're adding up like every month and coming up with a number. I'm not really sure where
Yeah.
the active user number comes from. But as with Microsoft's numbers about Microsoft Edge, you may recall back in the fall, they said that they had 330 million active Edge users, which is literally impossible if you look at usage numbers for browsers from every metrics firm on earth. It's just not possible. I think these numbers are suspect. So the way I would phrase this is I would caution, because I know there's a lot of people out there who can't stand Apple, they hate Apple, whatever it is. And they look at things like HomePod or Siri, and they think there's no way this stuff could ever be successful. Just remember, this is a very successful market. Apple has a very dedicated user base. They may never win in terms of market or usage share, but they will typically win in the areas that kind of count, like money.
I was going to say revenue,
profits, whatever. So I mean, look, Siri may suck compared to any of the other assistants. I think that's a fair statement. But it's also going to be very popular just because Apple makes it and Apple puts it in their devices. Apple has over 1 billion devices that could run Siri. The fact that 50% of them supposedly are actively using that thing. I actively use it because I say the word seriously a lot. I'm waiting for the thing to pop in, and it often will chime up because it hears, the name is part of that word, and that's my active use of that digital assistant, inadvertent, and that's probably the case for a lot of these things, frankly. So I'm not sure. I guess what I'm trying to say is I think it is pretty popular because it's an Apple product.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing too that kind of jumps out at me is, other than your ludicrous instance, because you say seriously a lot, maybe you should try toning down the sarcasm in your life. I would.
It's a little. Wow, thank you for that unexpected advice. Yes,
I would tend to think though that, now, granted, I know people are going to write and say, "Oh, it's accidental all the time." I would tend to think that when people use Siri, though, it's more intentional because it's not something that just. It's not like Edge, right? Where if you double click a PDF, Edge is open. It's like, oh, you're using Edge. Well, not really. Like if you're using Siri, for the most part, you probably activated it.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm being slightly cynical here. I don't mean to suggest that most. I know it's how unusual for me. I don't mean to suggest that all or even most Siri usage is accidental. I don't mean it like that. All of my Siri usage is accidental, but I should add, there are two ways that you could trigger this thing accidentally, and I think honestly, at least one of them is fairly common. One is what I just described, where you say something and it thinks you're talking to it. I think we've all experienced that. It doesn't mean we're actively doing it.
I would agree.
But the other one is, the way that Siri works on these devices is you hold down the home key. And I don't know about you, but the home button, a lot of times I'll go to sign in and I kind of misclick on it and it doesn't, hit the Touch ID thing. So I hit it again, and it takes that as a long press, and all of a sudden the thing pipes up. And so it's kind of a double whammy of inadvertent behavior where it's like, I just want to sign in, damn it. And now I'm talking to a stupid assistant, so it's a little irritating on that level. But I bet a lot of people do that. Not most people. I don't mean it like that's most usage, but I'm sure some small percentage of people, that's some of the usage.
Yep. I think that's fair. Fair. Speaking of fair, do you think it's fair that the EU is fining Qualcomm $1.2 billion bills?
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt that they are guilty of this. And there's no doubt at all. But two things to this that I think are kind of interesting. And to be clear, what's happening here is that Qualcomm established an exclusive partnership with Apple where only they could provide certain types of chipsets for iPhones and iPads. And Apple agreed to this, and Apple received payments because they agreed to this, and would not receive these payments if they used chipsets from other makers. They extended this deal at one point in 2013. So here's what's kind of ironic about all this. One is that Apple was the other part of this collusion, and they're not getting fined. Right. Apple also excluded other chipset makers illegally, according to the EU. But the EU is not investigating Apple. They're investigating Qualcomm. So they're like, well, yeah, we found that Apple was doing this, but we're not looking at Apple.
Mhm.
It's like, really? So, okay.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And that was kind of the point of my article. But the other thing that comes out of this, and this issue has arisen before we're familiar with this, is that in 2015, 2016, Apple, or actually maybe it was 2017. I don't remember when it was, but last year or a year ago, they they actually stopped this agreement. They're taking chips from other companies now, and notably Intel. The Intel versions of the chips that Qualcomm makes, these are communications chips like LTE chips, are so crappy that Apple actually had to slow down the Qualcomm chips in the other iPhones so that they all behaved similarly, right?
Yep.
In other words, I'm going to get this wrong, but let's say you bought a Verizon iPhone and that had a Qualcomm chip in it, you would be able to attain faster LTE speeds than I would on AT&T because mine had an Intel chip and the Intel chip wasn't as good. So it's kind of like, yeah, they had this illegal agreement, but the truth is over the time of the deal, Qualcomm's chips were better.
Yeah.
So this decision, this partnership actually benefited iPhone users, right? Because they were using superior chips. It's kind of a weird situation. So anyway, the EU, they're beautiful. I love them. I love that they do stuff like this. They're just so, they're just so wonderfully, they're not really xenophobic, but it's impossible to look at this and not think like, do you guys ever go after European companies or is it just us? You know,
when was the last time
I don't hear a lot
BMW
about SAP or not SAP. Yes. What's that company? You know, who owns the Metro trademark, that German company?
Oh,
it doesn't.
Yeah.
You know,
well,
what I mean.
It worked out well for me.
I don't hear a lot of that stuff happening, but yeah. It's just kind of funny.
Oh man, no, I'm just looking. I thought I was gonna. Well, people will figure this out eventually. There's nothing going on in New York, but I have to go to New York, and I think Paul does too for just some meetings. And I was thinking like yesterday, it's kind of nice. I haven't gotten on a plane or booked a travel thing in a while, and
yeah. Fortunately for me, New York is not does not involve a plane.
Yeah, technically, I could take a train. I actually think it comes through where you are, but I think it's like
that would
18
be a horrible
hours
trip. Yeah, you don't want to do that.
I think I'd want to do it once and maybe just one direction just to see what it's like. But
I've always wanted to do that too, but I don't want to do it tied to some event where I have to be there at a certain time and worry about it. I just want to do it for
coming
fun,
home or something. I don't know. I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll do it one day just as an experience.
Yep.
But yep.
So before we go, there was one more thing. I just posted this before we started, and I think you might find this kind of interesting. You might have seen me complaining about upgrading to Windows 10s, the latest version or whatever, the Insider Preview on Twitter. And I just want to throw this out here as part of it because I just find this amusing. If you're in Windows 10s and you visit the download site for Windows 10, there are two tools that are available there. One is called the Update Assistant, and it is designed to help you upgrade to the latest version of Windows 10. So if you're not on 1709 and you run this assistant, you will get 1709. It doesn't work on Windows 10s because it's a desktop application. Okay. There's another tool called the Media Creation tool. This can do two things. It can literally install media using USB or DVD, where it's the latest version of Windows 10, again, version 1709. And you can use that to install, obviously, Windows 10. Or you can just use it to download the ISO file, right? The Media Creation tool is a Win32 desktop application, and it does not run in Windows 10s. Interesting. Okay. But if you run the Media Creation tool on your Windows 10 Pro computer, whatever it is, and you download the ISO file, and then you copy the ISO file over to Windows 10s, you can double click on it and it mounts as a drive, which is normal. That's how Windows works. But what are the what is the setup application? Well, how would you describe the Windows 10 setup application is a desktop application.
Yeah,
right?
It's definitely not a store app.
Well, guess what? It runs fine. It runs on Windows 10s. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So now some people are probably thinking, yeah, well, that makes sense, Paul. It's a verified app or whatever. Microsoft makes it. Why wouldn't it run? Well, why wouldn't the Media Creation tool run? Why wouldn't the Update Assistant run? Those are also verified Microsoft apps. I mean, they should be. Why do I have to go through these hoops? Why do I need to buy, have another computer that has some other version of Windows on it in order to get the ISO out of it, copy it over, and then run it that way, right? This is just it's a little minor thing, but it's one of the things that makes Windows 10s so fun. It's sort of like your microphone issue. It's the gift that keeps on giving. just when you think you've plumbed the depths of everything that is stupid about this operating system, you discover something new. It's nice.
Yep. Yeah. That one is interesting.
Yeah, curious.
I'm just looking at this microphone, just thinking mean thoughts about why it's not working.
I think it's fun that this is happening because you need something to waste your afternoon on.
Yeah, it's depressingly accurate. I'm actually, I was writing up right before this post, or right before this podcast, writing up building this PC, and I'm actually got a lot longer. I'm like 880 words, and I'm not even done yet. And
right.
It's like, man, this is going great. I've had just a couple minor hiccups.
Nothing
and then
can stop me now.
It's like charging onward and upward, and USB. I don't know. I got to figure out if it's not working with Firefox, because that's what we're using right now to do this podcast, or if it was something else. But I don't know. It's worked every other day this week. So there you go.
Yeah. Yep. That's how technology works. Exactly. You've made no changes, and today, for some reason, it works differently. Or not at all, I guess.
You got anything else for today, Paul?
I do not. I guess I'm going to have to go look at booking travel for New York. I assume what you're telling me is that this meeting is on. Is that the point of this?
We should check your inbox.
Okay.
Email,
I will do that.
Good. All right, folks. Today's show is brought to you by Cloudberry Lab. Check them out. Protect your data by backing up your home business to your own cloud storage like Azure, Google Cloud, S3, and all that other good stuff. Check them out at cloudberrylab.com/FRD. And hopefully I will be back with a working microphone tomorrow. Have yourselves a wonderful day.